One thing that I found really interesting was you're in the middle of the CBD in Sydney, and you had so much demand that you opened up a second location, and you were deciding between, do we go to another geographical area, or we have so much demand here, do we just open up another location here? So you've got two gyms within like 5 minutes walking distance from each other.
Yeah, less. Yeah, they're 1 block away.
So what made you do that? Because most gyms would just be like, this is crazy.
So I think about it as potential clients per square meter. So if you take like a residential area, your potential clients per square meter is really low, right? Eventually you start Xing out a massive amount of your suburb. Now you've churned your entire suburb. You've churned your entire market. And
So they still live there, but they don't attend.
exactly, they don't want to come back and they don't leave the suburb because they've got a mortgage or they've lived there. And so your turnover in that square meters, like of new potential people coming in, is super low. Whereas the city, your client per square meter is super high, right? Because you've got office towers that hold 8,000 people in them.
On today's episode of Agency Podcast, I sit down with Lachlan Rowston, who is the CEO and founder of Locker Room Gym, which is Australia's most exclusive gym. Today we talk about what does it mean to build a ultra niche gym, and it was a really great conversation on exactly what it takes to succeed in the world of fitness. Lachlan, welcome to the pod, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm excited, and you're doing some really interesting stuff in the gym space. And we were talking before about how I did my time at World Gym, and I kind of have cut my teeth in the fitness space. But you're making some waves, and you're kind of really tackling things differently.
Yeah. We're Gen 2 is what I call it.
Okay.
So I got that term from, there's a consulting group in the US called Fit Insider. They basically have the most popular industry newsletter in the fitness industry. They talk about new like brands coming into the market, like how investments are going. You know, this private equity company just bought this, or this brand just rolled up with these brands, and yeah, they're huge. And we did a consulting session with them because we're looking for global expansion in the future. And I was like, does our concept have legs? Like, what do you think about a US expansion? Blah blah blah. And he's like, it's super interesting. So I was like, what valuation would you give us? Because like some of the valuations that these Gen 1 models are getting is like quite poor. And I'm like, I'm not going to go all this way just to sell it for that valuation. He's like, no, you're part of Gen 2. And like Gen 2 valuations are like a bit unknown at this point. So like Gen 1 is like World Gym, right? Global gym formats, low price point, get heaps of people in, big space, equipment leases. Then you've got like in the group fitness space, you've got like the F45s, Barry's Bootcamp, Orange Theory. It's all kind of Gen 1 because it's basically the same thing, different coat of paint, slightly different workout, different music, different instructors. But what ends up happening at the top of those brands is like the executive teams and the marketing and the branding teams. They're all the same people. They just like take different salary packages and get recruited across the different brands, but it all ends up looking the same to the consumer. And so Gen 1 is kind of stuck. And then there's a lot of brands coming out now, a lot of gyms coming out now that are still copying the Gen 1 model. We didn't want to do that. We were a Gen 1 gym previously, my old brand. But when we went into opening Locker Room 3 years ago, we're like, we need to do something different. We need to innovate here. And so hence a Gen 2. And there's some other Gen 2 concepts that are around I can go into if you want to. But yeah, there's like a new wave of gyms. And I would just say it's more like, it's just getting more niche, if anything. And so like we've become like super niche.
How would you define like a Gen 1 gym or a Gen 2 gym? Like how do you really separate the two?
Yeah, I think, the niche is one thing. Like the consumer that they go after is like very different and like hyper specific. And then I would say that from the consumer perspective, because probably most people listening, the way to understand it is like when I go to this gym and say a new gym was to pop up, you don't leave that gym because that current gym that you're at has something very unique that other gyms don't have. So it's like, for example, there's a gym called Change out of the Gold Coast. I think it's the Gold Coast. I did a workout there. And what they are, they're like a group fitness workout. So nothing like too special about that, but they're also combined with Pilates. And they know their consumer, which is like a hot 21 to 31-year-old single girl, wants to do Pilates, but she also wants to do group fitness and lift weights. And so she's like, well, I can pay one membership and get Pilates and group fitness in one. It's not that innovative, truthfully, but it's enough so that like if the next group, if an F45 opened up down the road or a Barry's Bootcamp, they'd be like, I probably won't go because I'd rather spend my $80 and get two things for that. So that'd be an example of Gen 2. There's another one actually founded by an Aussie, but in New York. I think they've got, I want to say 3 or 4 locations. They started in COVID. The concept was, so basically I think it's called Squad New York or Squad Athletica or something like that. And the idea is that you train in squads like a footy team. So like if we're in a footy team together, it's the same group of guys and we've got practice on Tuesday and Thursday nights and then we've got game day on Saturday. And so like when you join that gym, you join a squad. They allocate you to a squad. So they go, okay, what's your preferred training time? You go, okay, 6 a.m. They go, cool. We've got one opening in the 6 a.m. squad and it's with these 6 people, and they put you with that squad and you can only train with that squad. So like you become really close friends. And I think you might do like some kind of personality test potentially to like fit you up with the group. They're like, all right, you're a really good fit for this group. You know, you're in finance and they're kind of in that finance sector. You're in that squad, and then your training times are this, this, and this. And I thought that was quite a cool concept, and it's growing quite quickly. And that's obviously very unique as well, because most group fitness gyms, you kind of just meet random people. This is like, no, this is your group that you train with. So it's like way more focused on community building. They have a lot of community events and like coffee stuff during the week and all that sort of stuff. Like they have an events manager as part of their head office, which is like most gyms don't have that. So there's like a couple examples of Gen 2. They're like, yeah, it's a unique experience from the consumer perspective that goes, okay, I'm staying here because this is the only place that does this.
Yeah. And do you think like with a model like that, and in your case, you know, we kind of see it as like you're Australia's most exclusive gym for, you know, business executives or founder types. And in your case, the Gen 2 component, and which I find is really interesting, is, you know, for someone to join up to Locker Room, they have to kind of pass a criteria, they have to hit a certain threshold, and by the sounds of it, you're turning down more applications than you accept.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of applications that don't make it through because once we send them the pricing, they're like, oh, okay, I can't afford this, which is totally fine.
Can we talk about the price point?
Yeah.
So I understand it's $400 a week.
Yeah, I'd say the average, between $350 to $400 a week, paid up front in 6 and 12-month packages. So entry point is like somewhere between $9,000 to $10,000 for most people to get in. Some people pay more off the bat, but yeah, average yearly spend would be like between $18,000 and $22,000, depending on stuff they add on. Yeah.
So when you talk about a price point like that, I understand for a lot of people it would be turned off like, hey, that's ridiculous. I can pay $13.95 to go to Fitness First, or I can go join this club and get all the same equipment and blah, blah, blah. Like clearly in your case, it's not about the equipment that they're purchasing. It's about the experience, the environment. In your case, like what is it that you think these executive types and founders are really buying when they buy a membership?
There's a lot of things about the current offerings on the market that don't work. And so really the consumer that we're going after wants personal training, right? So when you look at personal training, what works about it is you have a relationship with an expert, right? You get, you know, if you're a beginner or you have moderate experience, or even in some cases, some advanced people, not many, they just like the accountability and relationship that they have with the trainer. Where it falls short is that for our particular clientele that are super busy, it's very hard to make their session times consistently. And if a trainer's like really good, they're generally booked out or like they have a wait list. And so it's hard to get in with the trainer. And then once you're in, he's like, okay, I can do 8 a.m. on a Thursday and I can do Tuesday at 4 p.m. You're like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I can make those times. It's all I can get. So I'll do it. But then, you know, they get a call up to Melbourne, or they get a last minute client call, or name your fire in the business that, you know, they have to put out each day. They just end up missing the session times. And obviously the coach has 24-hour cancellation windows. So they're not showing up. So they're not getting results. And then when they do show up, it's like, it's probably not enough over the long term to get the result that they're after. And for one person to do everything for someone, their nutrition, their accountability, their training program, like it becomes a lot for one person. And so we wanted to take all the things that were difficult about PT. Also, most of it's delivered in a Globo gym, right? And if you've been to a Globo gym at 6 a.m., it's like there's like a 3-person line for every piece of equipment. So you might be paying this person $150, $200 an hour. They're the best PT in the gym. You've got leg day program. All the squat racks are taken. The leg press is taken. The leg extension's taken.
And you can see his brain ticking like, oh, let's do this other machine instead.
Yeah. I mean, I go to a Globo gym in Bondi and I go in there in the mornings and I watch the PTs walk around and they're always changing the program. I don't think it's ever done as written, like ever. And so there's a lot of frustrations from the PT side and also the consumer side. And we just looked at that and go, okay, how do we just build a model that would just remove all that friction? So for us, they pay for obviously the personal training side of things, the things that they kind of already get with a personal trainer, but we've removed a lot of the friction for them. So they pay for conveniences. So one thing being that we have basically a system where they can book at any time. So it's like PT on demand. So they open the app and they just look at all the availabilities of all the trainers and they can just book in whenever they need to. So they get a lot more flexibility, which means they get more sessions done, which means they get a better result, which means they're more consistent, which means it's more valuable to them. So they get that. And then they also get like a gym with more people like them. And one of the common complaints is that, oh, you know, it's intimidating or it's scary or like the crowd's a bit rude or whatever it is. You know, we have max 8 people training at any one time in a big gym. So it's like they all have their equipment, they have plenty of space, showers, all that stuff. So just simple things like that. It's like we had a Google review the other day, and one of the clients was like, this is like the business class of gyms. I think what he meant by that is like, pay a little bit more, we pay a lot more, but you get your own space. It always like gets done on time. It's exactly what you need. You get a result. So that's ultimately what they pay for. Nothing super innovative, but just removes all the friction points for them.
Do you think that like when it comes to most gyms and, behind the scenes here, we've probably worked with 19 or 20 gyms, and the common conversation is we want to be community driven, we want to be disruptive and innovative, we want to be something different, and we're better than all the other guys and every other gym sucks.
This is what the gyms say.
This is what they say to me.
Asking for you.
This is what they say to me, and they go, look, we want to work with you because we want to be innovative. Then we dive into the workshop, and the same kind of concept spits back out at the end. It's like, and I get it, there's fear because you're, starting a gym, you're investing all this money into equipment, you're buying hammer strength equipment, you're signing a lease for 5 years, you're setting up a reception, you're hiring staff. Like, it's a lot to manage. Big capital outlay, for sure. Yeah. It's a big runway and it's a high cost. And then you're selling memberships for $13 a week, and then you're trying to get these tiny little margins. And I think what I've commonly seen, both working in the gym and working with gyms from a strategist perspective, is there's a lot of fear around, well, if we don't appeal to everyone, we're not going to make it. And they try to accommodate for classes for the people that want classes. And they have the cardio studio for the people that like cardio. And then they have the CrossFit zone for the CrossFit people. And then they have the calisthenics for the calisthenics people. And then just the weights for everyone else. And it just kind of ends up being back to Gen 1. How did you come up with the concept initially to go, I'm kind of done with that, because you owned 3 CrossFit gyms, or you had a stake in them. Yeah. At what point were you like, I want to do something different here?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first, I'm curious what you tell some of those gyms, but I just saw the trend like it was just going down, right? Like group fitness was getting super saturated. Like everyone had a group fitness gym, and then there was just more money going into startup brands. Like I don't know anyone that did a branding or strategy session with an agency when they first started gym. People just slapped a sign on the door and just got started. So the competition was pretty low. But yeah, 7-8 years later, the competition's like way, way higher. People come in, like, cool, I got $10 million of funding. We're going to start with 5 locations. It's all polished. I'm like, I can't compete with this anymore, And I just saw the margins getting pushed. There was not a lot of innovation in our particular model. And then to overhaul it, I was like, it's just too hard. I'd rather just sell it and then just start fresh. So that's basically the point we got to, is just the market was just dictating like the next move. And I think sometimes it's hard because I see a lot of guys that I own gyms with in the beginning, they're still doing the same thing. They're still struggling. And I'm like, I mean, I know what the move was for me, but I think it's tough to kind of let go of what you've built and then sidestep into something new. But what do you tell some of those brands that like clearly are not innovating, that say they want to innovate?
Well, I think people have a misconception around what innovation really means.
Okay.
And typically what we do with our clients, and this is a really fun exercise for anyone listening, is you have a sheet of paper, you draw a line down the middle, and on the left hand side you write down what are all the assumptions of gyms. So if you were to just canvass and survey your local city and ask them, hey, when you think of a local gym, what do you think of? And they would say, typically something like, oh, there's a reception, and then there's like a weight zone, and then a kind of like a group fitness area, and it's the same kind of assumption all around. Then you might assume, oh, there's a vending machine for pre-workout, and there's 24/7 access, and you get the little plastic key tag, and there's $100 joining fee. Like there's all these assumptions, like every gym kind of does the same thing. So you list them all out, and you list as many just standard and boring and general assumptions you could possibly list. Then one by one, you just ask yourself, how would I reverse this? So for example, you get a crappy plastic key tag that costs $100.
Yeah.
What about if you gave them like dog tags that had a chip in it and it's kind of branded and cool? Like, how do you just make everything interesting? Rather than a vending machine, maybe there's like a free kitchen that they can have access to, and it's just full of snacks. Or instead of like, 24/7 access, it might be like you get a card, and you can level up your card like EB Games, and you get access to different places in the gym. It's just, you want to just think radically different and hypothetical. And then once you've reversed everything on that list, you start to highlight, okay, which ones would we want to really lean into? And to me, that's innovation. That's like, it used to be done that way, now we do it this way. And a classical example, I think, of like what innovation is like ice. So think about how we used to get ice. You'd have to cut it off a mountain, and then
Okay, I was
horse and
trying to figure
cart
out which ice we're talking about first. I'm with you now. Frozen water.
No, not meth. No, so frozen water. So you'd have to cut ice off a mountain and like horse and cart it down to the town.
Okay.
And then in the industrial area, they would get these big vats and these cryo chambers or whatever, fill it up with water, turn it into ice, chop it up, and then send it into town with a truck. But then you could make like a home-sized like ice maker. You know what I mean? Like those leaps are innovation.
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about, the Gen 2, is an innovation in the gym space where it's like used to be done this way. Now we flip the script and we do it radically different. That's usually what we're trying to help people work with. The challenge is once we go through that exercise and they start to pick some things, they still kind of get a little nerve wracked. And then they go, well, the status quo is this. Like we don't want to be too risky. People like to say they're innovative, but it's really scary when you have to do it.
Yeah.
And in your case, you did it. Like you've actually gone out and so like what inspired you to go, you know what? Like instead of 18 or $13 a week, 400, and they paid up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not making the money I want to make is usually a pretty good way to do it. And then running it in a spreadsheet going, if we charge them this much and do this, that's way better. So like, let's do that. But yeah, there's always hesitation and fear around being a new concept on the market. I still remember, it's crazy, but like I got this, so I think we were maybe 50, 60 members in at this point. So we couldn't have been going for more than a year. And we had just released, so one of the pivotal moments in the business was we got an AFR article that came out, which was just about being Australia's most exclusive gym. And it like really put us on the map. And after that, probably a week later, I got a phone call, like a random phone call from this woman, like the definition of a Karen. Like she called up and she was like, "You are a pig." I was like, "Excuse me, who is this?" She's like, "How dare you build a gym for misogynistic, white, high affluent men?" She's like, you should be disgraced. You should be ashamed of yourself. She goes, "I bet you don't have a sister or a mum." She's like, you're filthy. And I'm like, "Can I get your name?" And I almost think now, it went on like this for like 20 minutes. And I was just saying, yep, all good. And then I was speaking to someone about it and they said, I reckon what they were trying to do is set you up to say something. They had you on record. You would have blasted something. And then next thing you know, you would have come out in like news.com.au on like a gossip piece or something. Yeah. Or maybe not. Maybe there's just some Karen out there who just like really wanted to see the end of us. But I think that was like a really good example how our brand and our messaging was like, it was really polarizing at the time. Because it was like, it kind of did look like a men's club kind of exclusive, tall poppy, we're better than you kind of thing. We've softened it up a little bit more now, but initially to kind of make a name for ourselves, we had to like rub some people the wrong way. And I think when you do that, it just means that the people that like you, they really like you versus like you're kind of lukewarm with everyone.
Yeah, because I always come back to the rule, like if you try to be for everyone, you end up being for no one.
Yeah.
So how did you start to, I guess, find this particular crowd? Because, when you look at a market, you might see a hole in the market, but then the next question is there a market in the hole?
Yeah.
And can I monetize it? Can I actually pull this thing off? So was there a defining moment where you're like, I have a concept and I think it's going to work?
Well, I mean, the first sale is always the first affirmation that, okay, we're on the right path here. But yeah, like I think what you're alluding to is like product market fit, right?
Well, when you started, did you have the idea of how you were going to do it before you opened the gym?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had the rough model built out and like the spreadsheets and the financials and stuff. But yeah, what we weren't sure of was like, who exactly is the crowd that's going to buy from us? We basically knew it was someone that was already paying for 2 to 3 PTs a week. And so they're spending that sort of money as well. So the price point's not outrageous, but maybe in the format and how we're doing it, they may not vibe with it. But what we did is we joined a business club. Club United Business, Cub. I think you
we're in Cub.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Shout out to Cub.
Yeah. So Cub's awesome. And I joined Cub in 2020, like end of 2020. So they were just coming out of their digital version of it.
Yeah. We've had Dan Hakim on the pod.
Oh, awesome.
He's great.
Dan's a member.
Yeah.
At the gym. And basically it was like, we went into the club, we had the concept, we were opening in probably 6 months and we started like asking people in the club at the time, like, would you join a gym like this? And we probably signed up almost 10 people before it was open. And so that was really like, okay, this is our target market. These are the people that like it. That was like our pre-sales.
And they were paying upfront like 10 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before it was even open.
So you made 100 grand through a handful of sales, through a networking group before the club even opened.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, the concept works.
Yeah. It was just like, okay, we just got to get more of these people. And then, referral networks. And then I just like over delivering for those initial clients. And then it kind of built on itself. And like I was telling you earlier, it's kind of like executives and business owners. They're kind of like the two crowds that we have. Now we definitely sign up a lot more executives than we used to, but in the beginning we signed up a lot more business owners. And it's not that we don't sign up business owners now, but there's just a lot more executives in the city. Business owners like either work from home or they have offices in all different sites. They don't have to be in the city. So we get less of them these days. And I think where we're situated as well, it's like right in the heart of the financial district. So
Yeah, you're right in the middle of Sydney, essentially.
yeah. So business owners are also like, well, do I have to pay like 1,500 a square meter for like an office, but where, we've got nothing to do with finance. They don't have to be there. Whereas like for the financial sector, it makes sense to be there because they're all there. So we sign up a lot more executives these days. But yeah, initially it was like we founded the business with like other entrepreneurs.
So take me through the steps. Like you have, let's just say these initial 10. And I'm just trying to think back to when I worked at gyms, and it's like to get 100 grand, you're signing up, hundreds of members and getting initial deposits just to make that kind of margin.
In a world gym.
In a world gym, in a Globo gym,
Yeah.
Ben Stiller style, and really trying to get like a large volume of sales and get a little bit of money from a lot of people. But in your case, you're getting a lot of money from a few people.
Yeah.
What advantages did that give you as a gym owner? Because obviously you've got equipment, overheads, you've got rents, and you got all of the faculties and staff and everything that comes with the equation. But what kind of superpowers did you get because you were making that kind of margin?
Yeah, because we take the money up front, it means you can like get a little bit further ahead than, you can hire sooner than you would typically need to. Yeah, you can pay bills off. Like we're basically profitable a lot faster than most gyms. So that's definitely an advantage. I think it means also that like the clients that you have, they're locked in for a certain period of time. So it's like if someone's week to week with whatever 2-week or 4-week cancellation terms, it's like you could churn out a shit ton of members in like a month that you just signed up. So the fear, like the retention issues that a lot of gyms have, like we still don't really have as much of. So
because they're paying up front, they're not just paying a subscription and they're, I want to cancel it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like any health and fitness journey, if you've been doing this long enough, it ebbs and flows, right? It has ups and downs. And the problem is every time in the pay cycle that you give people is how often they evaluate whether or not they should be at the gym or at using the service or if they're getting value. And if you've got people on weekly pay cycles, that means every week they're reflecting on, is this still valuable for me? But we know there's health and fitness journeys have natural ebbs and flows, right? So in the downs, they look at the week like, I'm going to cancel. I had a bad week. I'm not really getting value for money. That was a waste of money. You don't want people that are going to live in the body for the rest of their lives that need to be healthy thinking that short term about their health and fitness commitment. So giving someone a long enough horizon, they can have a bad month and their month 4 can be terrible, but they're like, it's all good. Still got 2 more months to like get back on track. So from like an operational perspective, from like a results perspective, it just gives you more time, gives you less pressure to, obviously we dominate the first 30 days. That's really important. But then after that, like once they get a good rhythm, they get some momentum, it's fine to have the natural ebbs and flows because their commitment is so much longer that their time horizon is pushed out. So they're a better customer and they get better results because of that.
Do you see the psyche here as it's enough pain to get them to show up?
The money?
Yeah, because if I'm paying $10,000 to join, I want to get my money's worth.
Yeah.
Versus like, I can imagine an executive or a business owner, like I right now have 5 gym memberships and I don't even think about it. Right. And
Perfect customer.
Yeah. And I like barely attend any of them. And I'm just only now getting back into the motion of like hitting the gym. And I like having a few memberships because I'll hit different equipment at different gyms and I like variety. But like in your particular case, it's like, well, if I'm paying 10 grand, man, I'm going to show up a little harder with a little bit more intensity and commit a little more. Do you think that the pain of like putting that much money on the line up front is like, okay, I'm fully committing and there's enough tension there and enough money expended that I want to get in there and actually get my values worth?
Yes. Yeah. If it's not painful, then it's not going to work is what I think. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll just let that money go. You're just like, oh, it doesn't. And for some clients, it's actually not painful enough. There are some very wealthy people that, they're happy to let 20 grand go and they're like, it didn't work out, whatever. That's not really what we try and do. I don't, as fun as that sounds, just to take 20 grand and not service someone, we don't really want that reputation. So if someone really isn't showing up, we'll end it early and we'll refund them because it's like, you paid and then people ask you at dinner party, locker room, what happened or whatever. They just took all my money and like, I didn't get a result. It's like, they know they didn't show up, but they're not going to say that. They're not going to say, it's pathetic and I didn't show up because I'm lazy. They're going to say, I paid all this money and like, it just wasn't a good gym and I didn't show up. Right. Even if it's fully their fault and they appreciate that. So yeah, we want it to be enough that it hurts that, they want to show up. And for 95% of people, it does.
Yeah.
And they say,
do you have like a bit of a significance or a status effect, like a Rolex? Like I train at Locker Room. You know, do you find that people kind of wear it with a badge of honor?
Yeah, this is funny. So like we do have merch. In the beginning, I don't have the OG merch, but basically it's like a huge Locker Room logo across the chest. We still wear it a lot in the gym, and we'd give it to clients for free. Like they get their own locker, so we'd fold it up, give them a nice note when they come. But they would only wear it in the gym. And then we're like, oh, you guys like don't want to wear it? They're like, well, first of all, it's a massive logo. So like walk around in the city after a workout saying like Locker Room is like kind of like having the Gucci
It's like a
on
big
your chest.
FBI shirt.
Yeah, it's a bit obnoxious. And we're like, oh, well, that's really not the point of our merch. Is if you just wear it in the gym. The point is like you rep it outside the gym. Some clients would, but we're like, why? Why don't you wear it? And they're like, well, it is a bit of a status symbol. It's like saying, hey, I pay like an outrageous amount of money for a gym, which when people do it with a bag or they do it with a jacket that's like a Louis Vuitton or whatever, it's just been so culturally ingrained that it's not that much of it in your face. But for a gym, it's kind of like, I can't believe you pay that much for a gym. Like in one of the AFR article, the original one, there was a photo, and in the background of one of the photos, it was my co-founder Raf and I. It's like had our arms folded and the lockers were in the background. You could see a few names on the lockers. And one of the clients, his name was there, and he said his phone and his email inbox was going off all day. People giving him shit for how much, because it said how much it cost in the article, giving him shit for how much he spends on the gym. They're like, I can't believe you spend this much on the gym. You absolute wanker. It's like, just go for a run. It's free. So I think in Australian culture, it's like, it's very tall poppy. It's like, you spend that much in a gym, like, what's wrong with you? Like, just eat less. Why do you have to pay all this money? So there is a status symbol to it. However, I think for a lot of our clients, they don't necessarily want people to know that they train there and that they spend that much money on a gym.
So less of a flex for others and more of a like, I'm investing in me.
Yeah.
Very introspective perspective. And before we were talking about the two types of clientele that you get, one which is the group of founders, people that build, run, and establish companies, and then the executive types that might work for Macquarie Bank or you know they're flying around the world and doing big things. How would you say that they're similar psychologically, and how would you say that they differentiate?
Yeah. So definitely their schedules dictate a lot of that. Their personality types of executives, I find, by nature of their work, they're a little bit more highly strung because they're like on the clock a lot more. So they're managing their time a lot more closely. So executives, definitely like more type A, more to the point, like got to be time efficient, got to be effective, like can't talk, got to keep moving. Whereas the business owners, I would say they probably have a lot more ups and downs in their moods because, if Macquarie Bank doesn't do well, you still get, $10 million base salary. So it's like, I'm good, like I'm not too worried. I mean, I'm invested, but when a business owner has has a down, a few more things can go wrong. So they get bigger mood swings, but generally overall, because there's less time pressure on their schedule, they're a bit more relaxed, I would say, the business owners, except when things aren't going well, which has happened a little bit recently because of the economy. But yeah, those are probably the big differences. The similarities, I would say that to get to, and I was having this conversation with someone last night because they were like, oh, aren't all rich people like assholes? And I was like, yeah, interesting you say that. No. The Wolf of Wall Street, like Gordon Gekko kind of characters, it's just like it's like a Hollywood thing. The truth is, for people to become successful, and this, like you need a team. Can't do it by yourself. Or if you do, it was like outlier Bitcoin, put everything on Tesla kind of thing. But for most people to be successful, you need a team. And for a good team, you need people to follow you. And you need people to want you to win. And people don't want people to win that they don't like. And so what I find is the clients in my gym, they're very likable. Because they've had to be, because they have to have people follow them and work for them and like want to die for them. And if you're not likable, people aren't going to do that. And so like all my clients are like awesome people. They're like great. There's anyone you would get a beer with. I mean, I don't really drink, so I'll go get a coffee with. They're all like that. So like in terms of personality wise, they are a huge range of personalities from like the kind of typical investment banker, like ultimate alpha Chad kind of guys to like super dorky, like introverted, slightly autistic tech founder. Like you've got the full spectrum, but they're all awesome. They're all people that you would definitely go and like, have Christmas lunch with. Yeah. So in terms of, personality similarities, that's for sure.
Yeah. And that's interesting. And you touched on like leading a team, right? So regarding the Gen 1 gym setup for team, it's usually a revolving door of receptionists that get paid nowhere near enough to deal with the crap they deal with.
Yeah.
And then you have a cleaner that's underpaid. The equipment's never usually managed on a schedule. And then you typically have like the PTs pay rent to
Rental model,
have access to the gym, and then you basically sign up a member and go give them 2 free sessions. What's that format for you guys? Do you hire your team and pay them a salary? Like how have you innovated that structure?
Yeah, this is I would say if the most fulfilling thing about what I do is this side of it, because growing up in the fitness industry, I realized that there's basically no job that you actually want. The only job that you want is to like be an owner of something. And so like being a, if I'm just like, hey, I want to be a lifetime coach. I just want to coach people. I love coaching people. I don't want to run the business side of things. Your options are terrible. It's either like coach group fitness classes. The most you can probably make off a group fitness class is like 80. Some gyms have incentives based off how many people do your classes. You might make $150 a class, but that'd be pretty rare. Most get paid like $30 to $40 a class. So you end up working all these classes at like all these different gyms, because, one gym might give you 10 classes, the other gym might give you 15, and you're kind of just piecing it all together. So you drive between all these different gyms, then sometimes the hours get cut, the gym doesn't do well, so it's just a mess. And then the other option, which you talked about, which is like the PT rental model, which is what most people get into, is like some of the rents, they charge them like $500, $600, $700 a week. So your first 8 to 10 clients are just like making rent.
Yeah, because I think World Gym was like at one point it was like $680 a week,
which is a lot.
Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it's a lot. And like, they don't necessarily give you loads of clients. They don't make it easy for you. You got to market yourself. You got to learn how to sell. You're basically operating as like a full-time business as a one-man band.
And there's resentment too, because the PTs are like, the gym doesn't care about me. They just give me these crappy leads. And then the gym doesn't like the PTs because they complain all the time.
And the equipment's broken.
And then like both sides kind of hate each other.
It's an awful model. And like, it's a lose-lose, because as soon as you start doing well in the PT rental model, which I would say for most PTs takes like 5 years to get to like build up a client base. Yeah. To like get really good at your craft, to get results, to document those results, to market well, to have a website, to have a good social media, like all the things that you need to be successful, and then retain clients. I would say it takes, anywhere from 4 to 5 years for a coach to really be worth the money that they're charging. Then once you've established a client book, it's like, okay, now the only way to earn more money is to do more sessions or charge more per hour. There's a limit to how much you can charge per hour, right? Most clients aren't going to pay $150 an hour. Most PTs charge around $100 an hour, $120 an hour. Some elite PTs charge $200 an hour, but they've usually been going for like 10, 15 years. And so, or then your other option is, all right, maybe I make my sessions shorter and I keep the price up, or I just work more hours. But all those scenarios are not very appealing scenarios, because, I've hired guys that used to do 40-hour weeks, 50-hour weeks on the floor, which is like complete burnout territory. Like, it's just, most PTs can sustain about 30 hours a week, 28 to 30 hours a week. So based off that number, there's a limit to how much money you can make. And then you take the rent out. Now you can't go on any holidays. Okay, you want to go on a holiday, you don't get paid during the holidays. And if you go on a long holiday, you got to not only earn no money, but you got to give your clients to someone else at the gym that you trust. And I know heaps of stories where those clients don't come back because they have a better experience. And so it's just not really any scenario in which you win. So what we created was just like a regular job, like full-time employment. So everyone gets a salary, everyone has bonuses and pay bands, and they can move up through the salaries. And we pay like way more. So this is one of the advantages of charging clients a lot of money, is we can pay way more than most gyms. So like the most competitive salary at a gym I won't name, I know a lot of how much money a lot of gyms pay their coaches. The best top coach at like a really, really high performance gym that I know makes $90,000 a year. Our entry level coach can make $80,000 to $100,000 a year straight off the bat. So like one coach has got to grind for like 10 years to be the top coach of their gym. They make 90 grand. We start our coaches at 80 to 100. Some of our top coaches earn $130,000 a year plus bonuses. So for them, it's like, cool, I can set my life up here, And until PTs get to a point where they want to buy a house or they want to take loans or whatever, if you're in the rental model and you submit your financials to a bank, they're going to be like, we're not giving you any money. If you've got a salary, a base salary, and it's employment, blah, 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 the banks go, cool, we can give you like X amount for a loan for a house or a renovation or whatever. So what ends up happening a lot, so we get a lot of these coaches that have been coaching for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. They finally get a salary. They're getting paid way more. They get paid holidays. They get sick days. They get all the benefits of being employed. And then they can finally get a mortgage. And so like we've had like 4 or 5 coaches get their first home with us as well, which is awesome. But it's just giving them stable employment, and like they work in a team, and like, the rental model is super isolating. It's like you're kind of with your competitors all day. And so you get to work in a team, you get to innovate together, you get to collaborate, you get to work with it. All the incentives are aligned. So it just feels like I tell the clients, it's kind of like being a professional athlete. You come in, okay, you've got like your physio guy, you've got your nutrition guy, you've got like your strength and conditioning guy, you've got like your speed, agility guy. We kind of hire all these specialists and all these experts that come together, and it feels like, okay, the client is like this high performance business athlete. They come in and they've got like their whole coaching team to support them, and the coach is working together, and like we're all working to get towards the goals. Okay, nutrition's not working, speak to the nutritionist. Okay, you got an injury, speak to the injury guy. Like, it's super helpful rather than having to be the one person that does everything for that client.
It's a lot because nutrition and sports science and everything, like it's a complicated art form.
Yeah.
And in your case, like what has this done for culture, and how has your internal culture impacted the client's experience?
Yeah. People talk about culture a lot when it comes to building teams. I have a slightly different opinion on work culture. I read a book. The name, I remember the name. His name is John Hitler. That's why I remember his name.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, Hitler with a double T. And he is a business coach for mostly tech companies, but he's got a great book called The Little Book of Big Scaling. And basically what he did is he did like his own internal kind of research on all his clients and said, okay, what is the difference between clients that grow rapid, which I think he said is 20 or 50% faster than the industry average. So I think our industry grows at like 10% a year, which is quite fast. And so that means everyone is naturally growing at 10% a year. So for us would be double that, we'd be growing at 20% a year, something like whatever the maths was. And so he's like, okay, what is the difference between the brands that grow faster than the market rate or grow like fast growth and then just like average growth? And one of the things he said, and he's got like data on everything, which I love. So it's like, it's all data based, is they hire for talent, not for culture. And so he's like, gives the example of, he goes, okay, you could be in a social volleyball team. You've known each other. You grew up through high school. You went to college together. It's like the ultimate culture. You guys are like the best of friends ever. And you go up against, so there's 6 of you, and you go up against 3 people that are ex-retired Olympic level volleyball players who honestly have like never played together, don't like each other, and have like no communication or whatever. They're going to beat you 400-0 every single time. So he's like, talent always beats out culture. He goes, it's good to have a culture, but if you hire exclusively for talent, he's like, he surveyed all the brands that won like culture awards and like the best company to work for and all that sort of stuff versus companies that hire purely on talent, like never won a culture award. And he's like, these companies are way more successful. So we hire exclusively for talent. There's always like a gut feeling of like, hey, this person won't fit in, so we won't hire them. So like we do have that as like a threshold. But generally, like we don't really talk about culture at the gym. We just like go, if we get the best coaches, the most talented coaches, and we put them all together, we're going to get the best results. And that's how we do it. What's
generally like the vibe and like, and I appreciate like you being candid here around like, cool, like culture's one thing, you see it different. Regarding the talent aspect, like how do you define talent and what impact has that made on the clients?
Yeah, I think talent gives the whole company reassurance that like, we're going to get results. Like I don't have to worry about this coach coaching you because I know he's like top level. And I think if there's any sort of hesitancy in that, it's like, I don't really know about this guy. Like, I don't know if I want to give him this client. I don't know if I really trust him. And once you create that, like, I don't think you're as good as me, or the standard's not at the standard that we accept. I just don't think you can make the right result for the clients. But when everyone has peace of mind that like, hey, we're super high level here, you get this culture of like ambitious young people that are really trying to push, and they're like really trying to elevate each other and like, oh, have you learned this? Have you seen this thing? Have you read this book or listen to this podcast? I think you really like this. And they have like debates on like better ways to do things. And so it's what you get is just this constant upping of the standard, and the client benefits from that, from just getting better results, getting faster results.
So when you look at people, like, let's just say, that have extraordinary talent, would you say that they're typically A-type personalities, or there's certain traits or tropes that they carry? Like, for example, here at Rival, we have a very high performance team, and in our design room, we've had people come in as a senior designer at another location, and they come in here and they're like, oh man, the juniors here are crushing me. I can't keep up. So like our pedigree of a junior, midway, and senior is difficult and different from the standard. Our bar is pretty high here. And what we find is if people can't get up to speed quickly, the team are kind of like, yo, catch up. Like they get a little tough and they're like, keep up or get out. Yeah. And it's interesting because we do have that high performance notion here where it's like we want to be an elite squad, and there's a feeling that's associated with that, like we're kind of like a SWAT team, we're mercenaries, and people have to earn their stripes here. It does create like a weird dynamic. Is it something similar for you guys where it's like keep up or get out, or like, and it's not said, it's just kind of felt and you can kind of sense it?
Yeah, I mean that rings true with our team for sure. Yeah, I would say like we have what I've noticed at the top echelons of fitness coaches, there's basically like two personality types. There's like the alpha Chad, like was good at every sport, like elite bro, like ultimate, like, or not cheerleader, but just like the captain of the football team kind of vibe, like this a dude.
Like a
it's
Tom
like
Brady.
Yeah, like a natural leader kind of guy. Like,
Yeah.
not as interested in the science of training, but like incredible at building community, incredible at accountability, getting people on board, building relationships. And then you've got the complete opposite type, which is what I would say I was more of, which is like the super insecure dork nerd that loves the science of training and has like measured every macronutrient, done like the lifts perfectly according to the science and read all the research, and it just become like super jacked. So they look the same on paper. One guy was just born jacked and full of charisma, and one guy like learnt it through science and knowledge and just being a nerd. And they complement each other really well, because that really high energy relationship builder is great for the community aspect and the vibe of the gym. And then the other type comes in with like all the science and everything that works to get results. And they're definitely a more introverted type of personality, and they work really well one-on-one, but like maybe in a bit more of a group setting, they'll sit back a bit more. But the two are like the perfect yin and yang together. If you had like all introverts nerds, your clients wouldn't gel, because you're getting all different types of clients, right?
Yeah.
But if you had like all alpha chads, like maybe everyone would have a lot of fun, but like you wouldn't get the results as well. So like that combination we hire for. If we get like one super nerd, then we get like one alpha chad, and we try and get one for one just to keep the balance there. And that's worked really well for us. Yeah. No, I don't know, for whatever reason, that's just, as you ascend up the talent pool, it kind of just splits into those two types.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I find that fascinating. And regarding the community and the interactivity between members, a lot of gyms, again, Gen 1 gyms say, we're all about community. How do you define community, and what do you guys do to stoke that fire?
Yeah, I think it naturally helps that we have a lot of a similar type of clientele. Like, at a world gym, we get a lot of different people.
Yeah, like the CrossFit guys and gals, and then you've got the weightlifters, and then the powerlifters, and the bodybuilding, and the bikini comps, and then you have just the
students.
Yeah, the students and the kids. And then you have like the guy who has no idea what he's doing. He's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Yeah, I think that makes it hard to build a community, because they're all so different.
Yeah, because I remember bringing in like, a woman who's like, late 40s, and she'd just see the gym bro crowd and just freeze up and like, I can't sign up here.
Yeah.
You see, and it happens in gyms all the time, you see a crowd that's not you, and you're like, I don't really fit here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. People want to be around people like themselves. I was talking about video games earlier. Like, one thing that I loved about like early days video gaming community that were niche, it's like, these people are like me. There was a couple guys in Melbourne that I played Halo with that, I mean, if I bumped into them streets today, I've never met them in person. Like, we'd go hang out and chat for hours. Like, we just got along so well because we were very similar type of people. And I think that's kind of what each game did. It kind of siloed different types of people into different games. Like World of Warcraft people were very similar, and then like Counter-Strike people were very similar. And that is kind of, in some ways, now that I'm thinking about it, is what our gym is. It's a very similar type of crowd. They're all kind of in the same stage of life. They've got, a lot of similar experience in their jobs. And so that has meant that it's very easy for them to relate. And our model, because it's 2-on-1, so each session is a 2-on-1 session. Yeah.
In what way? What do you mean?
So 2 clients, 1 coach. So it's a 60-minute session. You'll do 40 minutes of weights, 20 minutes of cardio, but the weights portion is individualized. So you might come in, Dane, and then you're with Pasha, and then I'm the coach, and you've got legs today, upper body today. I take you both through the program, but it's kind of like a trio. So like, I'm having a conversation with the 3 of us. Oh, Dane, Pasha did this yesterday. What do you think about that? Or, oh, did you guys watch, both might follow the NBA or something. Did you guys see the trade that happened on it? And so you get that kind of community building, which is what we carried over from group fitness. And one thing we didn't like about one-on-one is it's just isolated between you and that client. And that is okay. Some people do like that, but the problem with it long term is that it gets boring. It's like, okay, I've trained with this person 3 times a week. It's the same conversation. I whinge about my wife again, and fucking kids and the mortgage, and it's just like, all right. And then on Tuesday we have the same conversation. And on Thursday we have the same conversation. So it got tiring, but being able to book in with different coaches, and you got a different person training with you each time, you still get an individualized program, which is what they want.
So all the PTs are like following this, like let's just say you assign me with a program, and if I'm booking in on the app at a different time with a different coach, they're still helping me with my program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we have like a centralized programming software that all the notes go into. So whoever the coach is taking you for the session, they'll see all the notes from the last session, all the weights and stuff. So you stay on track with your actual training program, but you get a slightly different training environment each time. And that model in itself helps to build community, because part of this book was, that I mentioned before, the Little Book of Big Scale. He was talking about culture in there. And one of the best ways to build it, he said, is just set your systems up in a way that it will take care of itself. So rather than need to do lots of events and like social media posts and stuff like that to build community, he's like, just set up all your incentives and your systems in a way that it just naturally makes it happen. And that's what, not intentionally necessarily, but just subconsciously in some ways, we built it that way. So
it's like organically cultivating itself without needing to be forced.
Exactly.
Like, hey, once a month we have an event, everyone attends. But in this case, you're putting two people that might not have met each other before together in the same room with a PT that might not have met before, which gives a piece of variety.
Yes.
So they don't feel so much like their day's monotonous.
Yes.
And then everyone gets variety, and it's kind of creating networking. I imagine businesses being conducted because of this as well.
It has happened. Yeah, we've had quite a few clients do business together. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah. Yo, my name's Dane Walker, and I am disgustingly obsessed with branding. I had to figure out a way to do branding every single day, so I branded myself. Then I started my agency, Rival. And hired a team of branding mavericks hell-bent on creating brands so good that they'll make your competition shit their pants. So here's the thing, you want your brand to go viral, and Rival makes brands go viral. That's why we're offering you a free 30-minute branding session to get an expert's opinion. If you don't believe me, the proof is in the pudding. Here's what clients have to say about Rival.
Rival is trusted by brands like Nutrition Warehouse, Light My Bricks, and Vumi.
So if you want to absolutely smoke the competition and make your brand go viral, hit the link below and book in your free 30-minute branding session.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how is this perpetuated, and like how has this evolved over the years, and like where are you trying to take it now?
Yeah, so we were just talking about this the other day, but essentially we're going to sell out our Sydney sites, our current square meterage, probably end of this year, which we're going to look to probably this time next year either expand into some more floor space in Sydney, which will just be in a similar area in the city. If we don't, we're going to go and do a Melbourne site. So we'll open in Melbourne. Once we can successfully operate between two states, then we'll look to expand internationally. So yeah, when we expand internationally, we'll still grow in Australia, but slower, and we'll just focus more of our efforts in the US most likely. Yeah.
And one thing that I found really interesting was you're in the middle of the CBD in Sydney, and you had so much demand that you opened up a second location, and you were deciding between, do we go to another geographical area, but we have so much demand here, do we just open up another location here? So you've got two gyms within like 5 minutes walking distance from each other.
Yeah, less. Yeah. They're close.
How close are they?
They're 1 block away. Yeah. They're like literally one street. You just walk across and you're at the other one.
So what made you do that? And like, what's been the benefits of this model? Because most gyms would just be like, this is crazy. How are they doing this? Because it's kind of like the Starbucks model where you see a Starbucks across the road from a Starbucks. It's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, so for us, it's like one thing that we don't like about the residential placement of gyms is if you churn. So I think about it as potential clients per square meter. So if you take like a residential area, your potential clients per square meter is really low, right? Because, people live in apartments or they live in houses, and, if someone lives in...
Everyone's spread out.
Yeah, everyone's spread out. And the thing is like, okay, that's good in the beginning. You get all these new clients, but eventually you churn them, right? Just natural churn of the gym.
And churn, by churn, you mean like they leave and they go elsewhere? And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that amount of square meterage, you actually lose. That becomes like a red zone, because if they got a mortgage for 30 years, like you've X'd that out. Now, the problem is if you do that over a long enough time scale, which is what's happening with group fitness gyms, is that eventually you start Xing out a massive amount of your suburb. Now you've churned your entire suburb. You've churned your entire market. And
so they still live there, but they don't attend.
Exactly.
So now I get what you're saying. So you're kind of like losing real estate.
Yes.
Because your opportunity of new revenue and sales is shrinking.
Yes.
Because people just don't want to come back for whatever reason.
They don't want to come back, and they don't leave the suburb because they've got a mortgage or they've lived there. And so your turnover in that square meterage, like of new potential people coming in, is super low. Whereas the city, your client per square meter is super high, right? Because you've got office towers that hold 8,000 people in them. So, and the people within those square meters are turning over quite a lot, right? Because you've got people being hired and new people coming on and new businesses signing leases. And so even though you might churn a few people, there's always new people refreshing constantly. So your pool of people is always big and it's always growing. And so because of those metrics, you're able to grow the gym quite well. Whereas like suburban gyms, what you'll find in their trend lines is they grow quickly in the beginning. As the churn rate starts to increase, then eventually they literally can't market and bring new leads in because they've churned their entire addressable
They've
market.
letterbox dropped everyone and run local ads, and it's just
They literally like that's it. Like when you map it out in a sheet, it's like, okay, you need to sell it around like the 3rd or 4th year, or you'll just like you're on a way to lose money. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you figure this out?
10 years. 10 years with the industry. Yeah. Well, a lot of pain because like, the gyms that we had in those suburbs, I'm like, why are we just not growing? We're spending more money on marketing. We've got a better product now. You know, we've got some new people coming in, but it's like not coming in at the same rate anymore. It's weird. I know there's a little bit more competition, but it can't be that. And then we're just figuring it out going, well, maybe we've just churned the whole addressable market. And then we started talking to F45s, especially because F45 is the best example because they grew super fast and then they shrunk super fast. So like they grew super fast, they churned the fuck out of their market and then they just stopped growing. And so some of them in pre-sales would sign up 200 clients in a pre-sale. Like I remember people that took franchise, they screw CrossFit, I'm gonna do it F45. And then they showed me their pre-sale. I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. Like I could never sign up 200 clients in a month. And then next thing you know, they're closing their doors or they're selling. And it made me start to think like, all right, we should go somewhere where it's like more dense so that this doesn't happen. And the city is that option, which is why people go, oh, you should open in the eastern suburbs or people have money and this and that. I'm like, it doesn't work because eventually we'll churn out the whole market there. You know, some people sit on 1,000 square meters, maybe not in the east, 300 square meters of real estate. I lose that client, that 300 square meters is gone. Yeah. And the next 300 square meters is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember like chatting to Nathan James, who owns Fitness Cartel, and he has like a criteria of like what a location must have. And he tends to hit like suburbs that have like people renting versus like owners. And he has like, he tries to get like townhouses or apartments. Like he really wants to kind of sit in like youth suburbia, where there's probably more churn.
Yeah,
needs to have 200 car parks. Needs to be next to a busy road. Like he's figured out a few metrics. For you guys, like how do you market? Like how do you advertise? You know, because if you look at brands like maybe a similar concept, which might be Lamborghini. You know, people are like, oh, how do Lamborghini get their clients? Because I've never seen a Lamborghini commercial. Like how do you guys generate the leads? Do people walk in? Do you run ads? Is it referral based? How do you predominantly get your leads?
Yeah, this is your area, so I'm interested to hear your take on it. But we didn't run paid advertising until like the end of last year. So we were primarily all just marketing activities that were, like no, Meta and LinkedIn weren't getting any money from us. So it was all organic social media, mostly through LinkedIn, walk past traffic, referral campaigns, letterbox drops, email outreach, and like cold LinkedIn outreach as well. So those were our primary sources. We still use those. We try and get half our leads from those sources now, and then half our leads from paid advertising. We're still figuring out the paid advertising game. We get a lot of success on LinkedIn. We do hit like our ROI numbers and our cost per acquisition, CPA. So that goes well, but we just haven't cracked Meta. We just can't figure out Meta. We're gonna have a few more goes there, but we just burnt so much cash in it that we're like, all right, the budget's done for that for this year. But yeah, in order to scale how we want to scale, all those little small kind of founder activities that we were doing in the beginning, we've stopped doing. And we're like, okay, we need to get like this paid funnel a lot stronger, so that if we open in Melbourne, we can just like turn on the advertising, put money into it and reliably get a certain amount of leads. That, and now we're trying to really invest more in the social media, organic social media. So like we started our podcast, the Locker Room podcast, different to the previous podcast we did, to just kind of help build more brand awareness. But yeah, one thing that we've always, so Connor, who's our head of marketing, and myself, we're basically the marketing team with like a bunch of VAs, is just, how do we want the brand to feel? Because the easy one to go to is, all right, let's look at Porsche, let's look at Rolex, let's look at Hugo Boss or whatever those brands and how they feel. Do we want to feel like that? Is it that appropriate for a gym? Maybe, maybe not, because you look at a brand like Equinox in America. I don't know if you've seen Equinox.
I've been in the Equinox.
Okay.
Yeah, I went in there to just use their bathroom.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, can I come back and like do one session? Because I was traveling over there for the podcast.
Yep.
We were like catching up with Lewis Howes and Chris Dill and a few others. And I was like, hey, can I just get a day pass? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
But like in a snobby way, like, no. Like 1 day passes, we don't do that. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, but can I use the bathroom? And they're like, sure. And I was like, oh, thank you. But I like poked my head in the gym and I was like, what is this place? Like the marketing was different. It felt vibey. It was like kind of intimate and Nike-esque.
Oh, you didn't know about it before you poked your head in?
No, I just randomly walked in and I was like, what's Equinox? And I was like, this place is rad.
Were you in West Coast or East Coast?
We were in Santa Monica.
Okay.
In,
I know the one you went to.
in Los Angeles. Yeah,
Yeah.
like right on the beachfront.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been to that one. Yeah. So like, I think they're an interesting example. Obviously, an amazing business. Started in, I don't know if you know about it. Started in the East Coast.
I don't know the story. No.
Yeah. So they started East Coast, and their founder was like, we want an Equinox on every block. That was the goal. I think they've got like 36 locations or something East Coast now. So they are more of an East Coast brand, and their growth strategy at the moment is they're like taking over a lot of dying gyms in the West Coast. So the experience you get West Coast in terms of fit out, it's not really what an Equinox is supposed to look like. They're supposed to be a little bit more high end, but I think that they're a mismatch, and I think a lot of stuff like this in America exists, but there's a mismatch between what they market and what they deliver and the experience they deliver. So if I was to look at Equinox, as they relaunched their brand with like a slightly different campaign now, it's very like Aesop kind of Louis Vuitton Prada kind of vibe to it. Very strange, very like cologne perfume ad. And I get it, but I also think then you go and get the experience of it. I'm like, it's just not the Globo Gym. Like it's not that special.
Packaged well,
It's
but
packaged
the
well.
product's still Gen 1.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, how much does that? I think in some Equinoxes they have some really nice ones in New York. It probably matches really nicely. But I think in most of their locations it's not. Like they just took on 1.6 billion dollars of growth funding from a bank. Yeah. So
Wow.
they're going hard.
Wow.
So they're a huge brand. But yeah, if I look at their brand, I'm like, okay, they're trying something different with how the brand feels. I'm like, is that appropriate for us? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough because American marketing also doesn't work in Australia. You probably know that, right? So how you market to Aussies, how you market to the US is very different. So I think we're still trying to figure out how our brand's supposed to like look and feel.
I think some of the culture from the US is bleeding out here in Australia in a sense where, like, if you look at Culture Kings, they took American culture, sold it to Australia.
Yep.
Now we're selling it back to America. But I feel like, in particular, millennials and Gen Z, we grew up on the internet. Like, I had a lot of friends in the US. I feel like it is shifting. And we've noticed that a lot of gyms now that we're talking to are like, hey, we want to be like the American gyms. That has been in conversation quite a lot. But yeah, it's something worth looking at. I think from my perspective, the industry does need to shake up. I feel like
The whole industry or just Oz?
no, the whole industry in Australia. I'm just because I don't know what it's like globally. I haven't seen what the gyms are like in Europe and all the rest of the world. But I feel like Australia is getting a little stale. Like we had the box gyms, the Snap Fitnesses, which was like, $6 a week, and it's like 5 pieces of equipment, and you tag the door. Then I felt like the group fitness thing really took off, and then the super gym thing, like the Good Lives and all the rest of it, kind of took off. And now it just feels like there's an evolution waiting to happen.
Well, we're a really interesting market because we're very affluent, right? So we have plenty of money, but where population is so small that mediocrity can't survive. And there's a lot of mediocrity in America. Like, I don't know if you've been to some of the fast food chains there.
Yeah, we felt like our experience was everything kind of felt the same. Like the food all kind of tasted the same.
Yeah.
And I personally wasn't blown away by anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you'll get some fast food chains you walk into, you're like, oh, that was okay. And you Google the brand, 850 locations. How do they have 850 locations? That wasn't that good. And you realize the American population is so big and so wealthy that they can support a lot of mediocrity. The difference with us is that for like, you either go really low market, like an Anytime Fitness, and you just kind of expand and everyone can pay whatever, $10 a week. But anything above that, it's like you have to be you have to be top of the market. Otherwise, you just literally don't have the population to sustain growth. And so you have to be the best of the best. And so it's kind of left the consumer in a weird space where someone that wants to spend $60 to like $100 a week, they're kind of getting like some brands with like 1 or 2 locations, 3, 5 locations, but it's like, it's okay. It's not that good. Or you're getting like where we're kind of sitting in is like a St. Haven. I don't know if you've heard of that gym or Total Fusion. It's like, all right, super elite, like super high end, but like really, really expensive high entry point, because it's like, that's kind of the only way our brands can survive, because we're going into these really expensive real estate areas. We need to charge a lot of money. And so therefore we have to deliver like a super high end service. Whereas in America, they can kind of exist in the middle and they can survive and grow. So yeah, we're a tough market from that sense, which is why people will innovate and they'll try and expand and grow, but you probably find they die or they have to move overseas pretty quickly. Or they go top end of the market, like what we're doing.
Yeah, for me, my perspective is like, well, branding is the art of communication, essentially. Whether that's verbal, visual, or like it's IP or concepts, it's transferring data from my head to your head. So like, how like you might be in a conversation with your spouse and you might say something and they get offended. You're like, it's not what I meant, right? And it's like in our minds, we have this code and we're trying to turn it into words and then send the words into someone else's ears and then they decode it. So we like codify concepts, send it through language, they decodify it, and then they make a decision on what it means to them. So like if I'm looking at Equinox, like how do I decode that and make an assumption of my head of like, is that for me or not? That's kind of how I see branding. But like, I think what's interesting here is like the concept of like actually delivering something different. That's product.
Okay.
So like with you guys, like the product is totally different. The 2-on-1 thing's really cool. The what I pay, what I get access to, the fact that I get privacy. There's only 8 people in the gym. I'm working with a staff member, not a PT that's a contractor who's been handed the free sessions. Like the whole experience, the whole package, the product is so different. And then it's just, okay, how do we code that so people get that quickly?
Yeah.
And not get offended like Karens.
Yeah.
So, to the point where they're like, how dare you? But I think what you're doing is fascinating, man. Like for you, like how did you, I guess this is so rare. This is so uncommon that someone would do this. Where did you get the, I guess, kind of the audacity to pull this off?
I do think about this sometimes. Like, how did we end up in this position? me and my business partner. I think a big part of it was to do with the podcast that we started.
Really?
Yeah, because if it wasn't for the podcast, we were just another CrossFit gym owner, and there were thousands of us. But I think
this is back when you had 3 CrossFit gyms.
Correct. Yeah. So when we started our podcast in 2014, the Mind Muscle Project, we got like exponentially more success through that than we did through the gyms. Our gyms were like quite honestly just very mediocre, our CrossFit gyms. But we got this inflated sense of like we're better than all the other CrossFit gyms because we have the podcast. They don't have the podcast. And a lot of them would be like, your podcast is amazing. And so we felt like from a status perspective, I'm just saying how it is, like we're like, oh, we're like the best gym owners. But we weren't actually good gym owners. We just were like really good podcasters with gyms. And so because of that, we got to like travel, like we did US podcast tours. We did 4 of them. We traveled to Dubai, like we traveled all across Australia. We got to interview like the who's who in the fitness industry. We got to work with like amazing brands like Whoop, AG1, 8 Sleep, all those brands that people know, all these other brands. And it always made us feel a little bit special. I think we carried that into locker room as like, okay, well, we're different. Like we're innovators. Like we back ourselves more. Whereas I think if we just had 3 like mediocre CrossFit gyms, we wouldn't have had our horizons and our minds expanded. And that's like a lot of what business ownership is, right? It's like you go up different levels and your mind expands. You go, oh wait, we can actually do this. Like you have that self-belief when you see different things and you meet different people. And I think going on a lot of those US podcast tours and meeting a lot of successful people, we thought our horizons really expanded a lot more than like if we just spent every day in our little suburb in Marrickville just like coaching people through CrossFit. And so I think it was, big. That had a big part to play with it. Is like all that travel, all those interviews, like seeing so much success in that podcast made us feel like, okay, the next thing that we do, like we back ourselves to do it. And I think that really, that was a big difference maker.
Do you think that was the people you were meeting and just, the quote of like iron sharpens iron? Like, man, I just met this person. They seem pretty human to me. If they can do it, I can do it. Like, what was it that I guess gave you the confidence?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is like you think, oh, you're not actually that special. You just kind of figured out a little bit of stuff and now you're making it work. So I think you definitely just can't discount that. I also think like just the experiences and the rooms that we were able to get in with like honestly being like, we're just like nobodies. Like why is this person taking an interview with us? And it just, I don't know, made us feel like almost not that we were entitled to it, but like that we could do it. If we set your mind to something, you have no right being here or speaking to this person or this much success and you achieved it, you're like, okay, you back yourself more. So there's just that like stretch goal, achieve it, next goal, stretch goal, achieve it. And I think doing that enough times over 10 years or 7 years really before we started Locker Room made us back it. And honestly, I think as well, we actually started the CrossFit gyms with five business partners. There's 2 of us now. So the shedding of those other 3 business partners each time, which was like a very painful process each time, it made us, so Raf, my co-host and business partner now, it made us look at each other and be like, okay, if we're spending all this money to get rid of this person, like why are we doing this? And like, what are our ambitions? And the reason that we were splitting off from those people is because we had much bigger ambitions. We're like, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. And they're like, no, that's too risky. We can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'm happy with how things are now. It's like, cool, we need to get rid of you. And so each time we did that, it was because we had bigger and bigger ambitions. And eventually there were no business partners to get rid of. When we got rid of the last one in 2019, we like sat in the model and we're like, no, we're like, because every time it was a focus was getting rid of this business owner because they were always the block to the next level. And then there was no business partner blocking us. The next thing that was blocking us was like, oh, it's the model we're in. it's actually the brand that we've got now. We need to get rid of it. And so I think our ambitions had gone way beyond the gyms that we were operating. We just hadn't realized it yet because we were just maniacally focused on getting rid of the current business partner that was holding us back. But it was always just because we had big ambitions. And then eventually we got rid of the model and it was like, okay, what's this next thing that we're going to build? Because we need to get rid of the thing we're in now. And so it was, jumping from that CrossFit vehicle to the locker room vehicle was like a big part of it as well. Just ambitious.
What was, I guess, the hardest part of that transition? Was there moments of doubt, moments of wanting to quit? Like, what was the toughest part of that transition?
Probably a tough part, signing a lease in January 2020 and then being told 2 months later after $150,000 into a demolition saying that we've got a pandemic and you need to shut up operations and that you still need to pay rent every day. So we've got the biggest rental bill that we've ever got. We've got like a dwindling supply of cash and we're already invested in the space. I remember we had a meeting with Raf and I and we said, okay, and people remember at the time, but Melbourne and Sydney were both in the lockdown, the first lockdown, and everyone was watching the cases every single day. And there was this one point where Melbourne had like their cases went up and they got locked down again. And we were starting to slowly open. And it was that summer, the first summer of lockdown. So December 2020, we were actually open, but we couldn't leave the state. So everyone went to Byron, if you remember that period of time.
Yeah, I was stuck in Geelong during that period.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, like 276 days lockdown. Yeah, that year.
Yeah, so you remember it. But basically we were watching it and we said, okay, because Melbourne had that spike. Obviously the lockdowns got more aggressive, didn't really have a summer. Sydney, fortunately, didn't have another spike. And so we're able to kind of just like live a bit more freely within the state. But we said to ourselves, hey, if we get another spike like Melbourne did, which obviously could happen super easily. This person speaks to that one. And then the next thing you know, we've got 50 cases. All right, we're locked down again. We said, if that happens, we'll just let it go. We'll get out of the lease. Because at the time, the government said you can walk away from any commercial lease. And we just sat there every day and just was like, okay, either the cases are going to go up or they're going to stay where they are and we're going to keep the gym. And it was honestly like a flip of the coin. So yeah, we just watched it every day and it never happened. And so here we are. But if it'd gone the other way, we like handshake agree, like we would have walked away from it and just, I don't know, figured out whatever the next thing was.
Interesting. And now looking at what you've done, there's a quote from Grant Cardone and he talks about this concept, the 10X rule. And he, said, looking forwards, things look incredibly difficult. When you get there, you look back, usually there's regret of like, man, I wish I kind of like went a little bit harder or thought a little bit bigger. Do you have those pinch yourself moments where you're like, wow, we pulled this off? Or are you more looking at the future and going, man, we can go harder and bigger and like, let's keep expanding our horizons and go global?
Yeah, I think we're the latter. I think we're always future forward, which has its downsides, right? Because we did last month, we did our biggest month ever. And then the first thing that came out of Raf's mouth, he goes, I think we can beat it this month. I'm like, we didn't even spend half a second appreciating our best month. He just literally said, I think we can just beat it this month. And
that happened with us last month.
There you go.
We broke a record and like within moments, I was like, we could beat it next month.
Yeah. I think that's just like the double-edged sword of being an ambitious business owner is like, you just want the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I'm cautious to not look back. And I would say like we're in the prime of our lives, right? We're healthy, we're young, we're growing an amazing team, building an amazing business, doing what we love, working with people that we love every day. I don't want to miss that part. I don't want to look back and when I'm like 50, 60 and go, I just wish I could have appreciated it more at the time. And so for me personally, I try and have moments in my day where I'm just like really appreciative of what I'm doing, always looking forward and being ambitious. But I spent so long just in that cycle with no appreciation that I do look back on it now and I think, I do kind of miss some of those times when we were sleeping in the gym upstairs and, it was summer, it was 40 degrees, no aircon. And, we're eating like cheap sweet potato from like an expired wholesale account. So you do cherish those times, but yeah, in the moment, it's always like, what's next? And I'm just worried as more time passes, I don't want to get stuck in that cycle. Sam Harris, who's like a podcaster, philosopher, I'm not sure if you know him. And he said one quote once and it was like, one day you'll wake up and realize like your entire life has passed you by. And I do think about that sometimes and I think, fuck, I don't want to do that because I can see myself doing it very easily. And so, yeah, always looking forward, always being ambitious because that's what you have to do. You have to keep growing, but like trying to appreciate the journey along the way.
I appreciate what you said there. And I, sometimes I'll work, at the moment we're in a scaling stage of the business. I'm working 16-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week at the moment. It's not always been like that. It's just, it ebbs and flows. There's been times where I work 4 days a week, 8 hours a day, and it's just not one of those seasons. And I got home last night and, you know, my daughter's 4 and I picked her up and I was like burnt to a crisp yesterday. I was like, man, I'm so tired. I'm working so hard and I miss the kids. And I was going through like this negative storytelling to myself in my head. And I like to do what's a tool in NLP called a reframe. And it's like you catch yourself in a negative state of mind and you flip it. And what I did last night was I was like, man, when I'm like 90 and I'm like in my deathbed, I'm going to like wish I was in this moment. And I just came back to the present. I hugged my daughter and I was like, this is awesome. I'm like at peak in my business, in a growth stage. Everything's good. I got my health and my whole biology just flipped within seconds and I felt incredible. Do you have in those moments of doubt, like when the COVID situation played out and you were like, oh my God, man, how are we going to pay for everything? Do you try to catch yourself out of those negative states of mind and flip it? And how do you do that?
Yeah, there's a few frameworks I like to use. The first one is I would love to give credit to all these frameworks. I just can't remember where I picked them all up from.
We'll try and find it for you. We'll tag them.
Okay. So the first one is you can only think one thought at a time. So like your brain only has the capacity to think of one thought at a time. And so when I'm having a negative thought, I'm like, well, I can't look at all my tabs at the same time. So I'll just open the good tab and then that'll get rid of the negative tab. And it's like, you can feel the negative tab wanting to stay open, but then you just click over to the good one and like it just goes away.
You know,
yeah. It goes away and you're like, oh yeah, because the brain can only think of one thing at a time. And so always understanding that from a very basic human biological level, I'm like, okay, I can just, if I just focus on something else, it can go away really quick. It's that old saying like, oh, change the subject. You know, it's awkward, I'll change the subject. As soon as you change the subject, everyone's forgotten about what we're talking about before. So that's always helpful knowing that, because I guess people, when they're ruminating about negative things, it kind of feels like I can't get out of this, like I'm stuck in this. Whereas like you actually are one different train of thought from getting out of it very quickly. Obviously you can switch back to it and think negative again, but can get yourself out of it with one thought. So I always like thinking about that. Another framework I use, which is like, yes, common, is just like, what's the silver lining, right? In a negative situation, there's always something good. And I can't think of any time where something bad happened and I wasn't able to find something good from it. And I think that just takes training. It just takes reps. Like I love the gym analogies because it's always applicable. Is like there are just like certain thought patterns that if you just like retrain them, it's hard at first, but then once you get good at it, like whenever something bad happens, my brain automatically goes like, all right, what's the lesson here? And this is like super cliche stuff, but there is always a lesson there. And in fact, when it's going good, I get more worried because I'm like, it's easier when it's going bad because now I'm like, all right, there's some learnings here. We can figure it out. We can grow after this. When it's going good, I'm like, oh, it's just going to go bad soon. When's it going to go bad? So I like to exist a little bit more in the negative moments. I think I get more anxiety when things are going well than when things are going poorly, because I think there's nothing to learn here because things are going well. And when things are going well, you're generally not learning anything. You're kind of sitting back going, oh, things are good. Kick your feet up. And that's when then things go bad. So it's hard. I find it hard to motivate myself when things are going well because I kind of just coast. Whereas when things are difficult and they're not going as well, I work a lot harder. I think that's like that ebbs and flows. So what I have to try and teach myself is like when things are going good, keep doubling down on the effort, keep doing more things, try not to sit back too much. But like I've also got myself, like when you say I work 16-hour days and I'm growth period and stuff, I'm like kind of jealous because I don't know, for however I've set things up, I can't do that anymore. Like I can't fill my day with that much stuff anymore. I think I've just delegated so much stuff that I end up not having a lot of stuff to do sometimes. I was even I chat with ChatGPT in the morning.
I'll come run the gym and you come run the agency. Yeah.
And like, I don't know if you use ChatGPT on the voice thing, you can have like a conversation with it.
It freaks me out.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's scary, man.
I go, hey, whatever I call him. I'm like, I'm like working not hard enough and I got too much time in my day. Like what would you fill my time doing if I'm like a gym owner and this and that? And they actually send some pretty interesting advice.
What does it say?
Well, firstly, they're very agreeable. So they're like, oh, it's great that you're doing so well. And I'm sorry to hear that you're like upset with how things are going. But like what I would suggest,
like a great friend, you know?
Yeah. Seriously, like a super smart, great friend.
Yeah.
And they're like, I would suggest like these 7 things that a founder is like better suited to because you've delegated so many things and like only you could possibly work on these things. And I found for me personally, without a starting point, I kind of don't know where to go. But if someone can give me a couple of bit of stimulus, like, have you thought about this, this, and this? I'm like, all right, awesome. I can use those threads and like build myself some more tasks. So that's what I'm trying to do more of the last month or so when I find I can't fill up all my time very well. And as a you know, coming from like the early startup phases where you're doing heaps and heaps of stuff, when you come out of that phase, it's funny because those are the days you wish for. I can't wait to just like have a weekend to myself and lie on the beach. Then you have the weekend lying on the beach. You're like, I need to work harder. I need to fill my day with more stuff. And so it just goes back and forth. But yeah, just for me, it's having those threads of like, okay, oh, that's right. I need to like read more books on leadership, because if I become a better leader, that's going to serve. So I'll buy some books on leadership. Or you need to think more about, okay, what are my scaling opportunities? And it's like, yeah, put the kind of real estate thing on the back burner. Okay, let me call the agent, see what's out there, go look at some more spaces, just stuff like that, that they're not urgent tasks, but they're tasks that grow the business. It's just very easy to forget about them. So ChatGPT helping me out.
Yeah, thanks, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And regarding the lockdown challenges and everything that came with that, what was, I guess, the predominant thing that you learned about yourself in that season of business?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't like coaching, that's for sure. I was thrown back onto the coaching floor because we're locked down. We put all our equipment in these trailers. We drove the trailers out to parks and then just like coach people in the parks. And so every morning I was like taking gear in and out of trailers and like coaching people. I'm like, fuck doing this again. I grew out of coaching a long time ago. So getting out of that, because I think it's not that I don't enjoy coaching. It's just that when I do it, I know I'm not doing all the other stuff that's more important. And that's a head fuck. So I definitely knew like, hey, I really want to like work on the business. That's for me. And then I think I just knew that a lot of people sat on their hands and took JobKeeper, JobSaver, whatever it was, like the free money from the government, basically. We had coaches that were like, hey, I'm not going to work. They just took the money and played video games, smoked weed. And for me and for my business partner, it was like, okay, how can we make as much money as possible here? And we actually did some insane profits during that time, because it was like free leads. We went to these parks in the eastern suburbs with like loads of rich housewives that were just walking around the park every day with their poodles and didn't have anything to do. And we were charging the same rate we were charging before. And we just signed up loads of clients. We were full. We're in the park every day from like sunrise to sunset. We were completely full, and all our coaches were working.
How were you approaching them though? Like, what was the pitch?
They were approaching us. We just put a little sign on the ground. People were scanning it with the QR code, and we were just doing PTs in the park one-on-one.
Wow.
Yeah. And so people were dropping the same money they were dropping now, not upfront, because obviously we didn't know how long it was going to go for.
But like $10,000 over, installments or what have you.
Yeah, they were just like, all right, cool, I'll buy 10 sessions or whatever, at $150 a session. And we were just signing up all these people. Like loads of them didn't stay afterwards, like when things went back to normal. But like our revenue didn't really dip during that time, and we actually grew a little bit. So just doing that was like, hey, I think no matter what happens here, like we're not going to quit. Like we're gonna push hard here. Yeah. And when things, like I said before, when things go bad for me, like that's when I really like to hustle. And then things start going good, and I'm like, okay, I can sit back now. I got to fix the sitting back part.
Yeah, I love a good crisis.
Yeah.
That's where I really come online.
Yeah.
Like, a couple months ago, like, things, just a lot was happening, and I had to jump on the tools, and I'm like, this is really fun. I miss this. And being on the tools again was teaching me a lot about new content I want to produce, and it was helping me with my keynotes. It was helping with the pod content. Like, it just fed everything. It's almost like you can get too delegated in the business and so disconnected from the daily operations, you kind of forget a lot of the things you were doing.
Right.
And for me, it was like being back in the tools. I was like, oh, I forgot how much fun this was.
So what do you do day to day? What's your role?
So predominantly what I do day to day is I'm on the forefront with the sales team.
Yep.
So we're out there prospecting and lead generating and pitching and quoting, which I find really fun.
Yep.
Because I get to kind of jump in the hot seat with the client. I'm like, tell me about your business.
Right.
And I'm kind of like dissecting. We joke it's kind of like an exorcism. It's like, let the demons out, man. Like, what's really going on in this business? And they're like, the money's not working here, and the culture's struggling, and we don't know what to do with content, and our website doesn't work, and our emails don't exist. And it's like all the demons come out. And it's like, great. Like, what do you want to do about it? And I really enjoy this process of like kind of brand therapy, where it's like, hey, if you really want, we can solve all this stuff pretty quickly. Like in about 6 months, we can put a plan together, roll it out, build, develop, support you with everything. And they're like, hell yeah. So I really enjoy this kind of like a problem solving issue where every time you get on a call, it's a new business. Like 1 minute we're talking to a bus logistics company, and then we're talking to a law firm, then we're talking to a personal brand, then we're talking to a comedian who's touring the US, and it's just always a different challenge, but it's kind of the same core principles applied differently.
Yeah.
So I spend majority of my time there and in the facilitation of the workshops. So when the client comes on board, we'll spend between 6 to 8 hours just allowing the client to completely unravel their problem and give us all their contradictions, all their hunches, all their all the things they're scared of and all the things they want to attempt. And then we just start to like piece it together and come up with a plan. From there, our team really take over and develop the messaging sequences and then turn it into design. And then we might build websites or produce content or what have you. But for me, I really enjoy being in the mud. Like it's super fun for me. And I think, you know, there was a period where I'd kind of had everything running itself and I was like a little bored, to be honest. And obviously it's not super scalable, but yeah, it's fun to be back in the trenches with the crew. And then we're hiring and scaling and I'm helping develop that. And then we're expanding into advertising. Okay. So we're going to go all out on advertising very soon.
You doing your own advertising?
Yeah, building an ad agency.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Because we build brands and we have done advertising, but now we're like, okay, let's put together, like we've mastered creative. Like absolutely mastered it almost to perfection. And we're working with big brands like Nutrition Warehouse and, you know, and so forth. And now we're like, okay, cool. The branding system is almost perfect. But the problem is once we build these epic brands, these companies go to ad agencies and then they don't really grab the ball and run with it. They kind of fumble it. They don't execute the creative according to plan. They don't read the guideline. They don't honor the brands. They're just like, here's a template that we use. It works. Put it online. Give us 40 grand. Boom. And the client's just unhappy and they keep coming back and they go, we really want to do advertising with you guys. Like you guys are great. I was like, fine. After like 5 years, I'm like, fine, we'll do an ad agency.
Right. So people were asking you for it, but you didn't offer it.
I didn't offer it and I wasn't interested in it until recently. I was like, you know what? Like we build such good creative. I want to control the rollout and I really want to be connected to our clients because we have really great clients. And I was like, I really want to be on the journey with them. That's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And some of our clients offer us equity to like be super invested in their projects. And it's just getting to the point now where it's just all fun and we're scaling, man. Yeah. But it's stressful. It's 16-hour days. It's a lot of problems we're juggling. But, you know, like last night I got home and I was like, man, like I'm going to miss this one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
You have to kind of come back to the appreciation side of things.
Yeah,
but
you hear like the billionaires and stuff on podcasts, and all they do is reminisce about like the early days. Yeah,
the grinds. Yeah, right. And so for you, man, like as you continue to scale and go international and roll this thing out, like you know, how do you want to be remembered?
Shit, hard question. How do I want to be remembered?
You take your time.
Yeah. You know, like I said earlier, I think the young version of me that got into the fitness industry that loved training, loved the feeling of changing my body and feeling more confident, and then went to go work in the industry and realized, fuck, there's actually not a lot of good career opportunities here. Being able to, and like a lot of gyms out there, and I know these gym owners as well, they do say that they have like incredible career pathways and all this sort of stuff. And then I see the salaries they offer and I'm like, that is not, you can't start someone on 55 grand a year in Sydney. Like, is that even legal? Like, how does someone pay rent, survive? And so for me, like being able to create the jobs for like the young version of me that's coming up through the industry. Well, the young version of me wouldn't have got that job, but 5, 6, 7 years into the career, if I made it that far, giving that person like a career where they can start a family, they can have a mortgage, they can pay for braces on their kids. That's what I want to be known for. I don't have to be like the biggest social media star or whatever. Like if it meant that doing that would facilitate that, be able to create more jobs, I'll do it. But yeah, for me, just being able to create those real career opportunities where people are like, oh, I really want a job at Locker Room. You know, there's like jobs in tech, for example. It's like working for Google, working for Meta, working for, you know, Airbnb. Like these are like the ultimate resume jobs, right? I want to create those jobs where people are like, I can't believe you got a job at Locker Room. Like that's crazy. And we're kind of getting there, but on like a big scale, I want to make it like the place that everyone wants to work at. Not just for the culture, but for like the pay packet, like for the money, like to have a good life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So if we can achieve that, I think we're on the way. Then I think that's how we'll get the most transformation, the most impact.
That's admirable, man. I really like that. And I think not many people in your space are really offering that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, innovation. What's a quote or a mantra that you've carried with you on your journey that you wished everyone listening to this would immediately implement?
Don't know if I've got a quote. I mean, quotes always come to me at weird times. I would say a belief of mine is that I believe that the most accessible and the best personal development tool is physical training. Like I've just seen it so many times that people try and think their way out of problems, or they try and therapize or talk their way out of problems. Whereas often, because so much of, you know, our mind and our thoughts is rooted in our biology and our physicality, when the physical systems aren't working, it's like, it's pretty easy to see why a lot of mental things go wrong. Like if your sleep is fucked up, like it's pretty hard to be emotionally stable, right? It's pretty hard to like have good memory recall and interact with people in a way that is just like normal for you. to feel motivated about things. When you have low energy, you have low motivation, right? You're just like, oh, I can't be bothered to go to the gym. I can't be bothered to speak to this person. Can't be bothered to pick up my kids because you're just tired. And that's just like a really basic thing. And the transformation, the evolution that you get through, if someone said, I need to get my shit together, I'd be like, what are you doing for the health and fitness? Because it's so easy, it's so accessible to so many people. Just start running, just start doing some push-ups, start drinking more water, cut out alcohol, like all these things everyone can do. Not everyone can afford a therapist, right? Not everyone has the discipline or the education to start reading books about psychology and mental training stuff. It doesn't always work for every people. Like listening to a David Goggins podcast, it's really motivating at the time, but if you don't do anything with that motivation, like then it's kind of for nothing, right? It's just mental masturbation. So actually physically changing your body, I just think it's just the best starting point for everyone to like have a better life. So yeah, I think anyone that's like stuck or struggling, I would just turn to your health and fitness first. Even if it's good, it can always be better. Yeah.
Regarding how people are kind of, high performance executives and what you're talking about just there when it comes to like, being the best form of personal development is to get in the gym, get in your body and get physical. When you're working with the execs and the founders, do you find that when they come into the gym, they apply the same thought process or behavioral patterns that they apply to business?
Yes. Yeah.
What are some of those traits?
Yeah, I think ownership is a big one. Like understanding that, I think it's Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership, like taking
Great
ownership.
book.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. So taking responsibility in your workplace, if something goes wrong and you're the leader of that team, whether you had nothing to do with it, being like, okay, obviously I didn't train that person or I didn't make the outcomes clear or whatever it might be. Also doing that with your body, not being like, it's because of my schedule, it's because of my kids, or it's because, I'm traveling all the time, like not blaming those things and being like, okay, I need to take ownership of this. I need to figure it out because I'm always going to be busy. I'm always going to be traveling. I'm always going to be X, Y, Z. So I need to figure out how to make this work. So taking ownership, I think it's probably the biggest one. And then I think the second one would be trusting in experts. I think we were talking about it before, like when you sign up like beginner clients versus like enterprise clients. Enterprise, like I've hired you for a reason. You're the expert. I'm just going to do what you say. Have that immediate trust. That's kind of the same with these top clients is they go, okay, I'm paying all this money. I'm hiring the best. I'm not going to question what you give me. Maybe there's a little bit of friction on some stuff. They're like, are you sure about, fish over like red meat or whatever? Outside of that, they're very trusting. They're like, you know what? I'm just going to do what you say. That's what we tell them. It's like, look, there needs to be more trust here. Like you've got yourself into this position. All your beliefs about fasting and like vegan and this and that and running, and they're not serving you. So like, just do what we say. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But we obviously know it's going to work. So that ownership and then just putting the trust in the experts is what we consistently see, and that's how they're successful.
I would agree with that, and I find that the tendency is that people that are, hyper successful are just like, I paid you to tell me what to do, so just tell me what to do. And they have so much in their mind that they don't have much neighborhood or rent-free space to really give it much thought.
Yeah.
When we work with like a nutrition warehouse, Grant Mayo is so busy. He's like, what do you guys think? We're like this. He's like, cool, roll it out. Whereas someone starting a business is like overthinking everything all weekend, all day because they don't have enough to do.
Yeah.
If someone were to listen to this and go, okay, I'm at the start of my journey. I'm not a high performance executive or founder yet. What can fitness do for me behaviorally to help prepare me to be a high performer? Can you transfer the other way? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you transfer what you do in the gym to the business arena?
Yeah. So like if you're in the business arena, I can imagine that they have the mindset to go into the gym arena pretty easily.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I put in the effort, I get the reward, invest, reward. Whereas the other way, it's like, people that are like high performers in gyms, can they transfer to business just as easily?
Yeah, it's a good question. You would think so, right? Because you think, okay, well, you discipline with your food, you discipline with your training, you appreciate that results aren't immediate and that like sometimes you got to put in a lot of work for like a result that's not immediately gratifying. So the core principles are there, but there are also a lot of jack guys that are broke, right?
Yeah,
so
I know heaps.
Yeah. So
I was one of them. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. So like not necessarily is the answer, but if you can create the awareness and you can figure out, I think business is more difficult than gym. Gym is in some ways, if you do it, it's very predictable, the results, right? It's like I eat these foods, I do this training, I get these steps, I get this sleep, I hit all these numbers. The result is like fairly guaranteed. Whereas like in business, not really. You could do everything right and fucking something could go wrong. The market could explode or I don't know, the client leaves or some crazy disaster. And like I did everything right and it's still fucked up. Whereas like also people can do a lot of things wrong and they can still strike gold. So it's a little bit unpredictable, but I think what training gives you is one, it just obviously helps you deal with the stress of business way better. So like, even if you're not seeing the progress in your business and you're trying to apply the principles from the gym to business, you're not seeing success, I think the way you're going about it, you're probably just like a little less stressed. You're a little less calm. You're like, okay, I'm healthy. It's okay. I do think as well, having some like business is about consistency and routine a lot of times, like showing up each day, doing the same stuff over and over and over again. And having that routine with the gym as well helps you, I think, build out as like an anchor for other stuff in your business. Like, cool, I wake up every day at this time, I eat these foods, I do this, I do these emails. Like there's a lot more structure to your day. And I think like a lot of business people, entrepreneurs, they need structure to not always, but having a little bit of structure, I think with the gym also really helps as like an anchor for a lot of people that don't have a lot of structure.
I think that's a good point. And I think even if it's just the discipline, the self-accountability, the rhythmic operating system of like showing up and doing it, that could probably translate. But yeah, I agree. I know a lot of jack guys and jack girls that are broke. Not that I'm jack now, but when I was broke as shit. So last question for you, man. Like what's a door you're trying to kick in right now to go to the next level as an entrepreneur?
Advertising. Yeah, paid advertising. It's like there's a few operational projects that we're rolling out at the moment, which from a product perspective will kind of be, I don't want to say the nail in the coffin, but like the nice bow around everything we're doing. And so that's like in progress. And once we've got that dialed in nicely, it's the product's more or less finished, so we can really start to scale it. It's just how do we're hitting our growth targets, but just. How do we get to the point where it's like, all right, we've got way too much growth here. We need to like kind of pull it back. And we've had moments of that, but we haven't consistently been able to stay on that trajectory. And so we think, or what we believe is that is coming down to just better paid advertising. And so being able to like do that, because that is the key for us to scale, is be able to like just put money into the system and just generate more leads. Being able to nail that part is kind of what's holding us back and what will hold us back if we don't nail it over the next 12 months.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think a lot of people are in the same boat. For me, my mindset is like, let's get crystal clear on the communication piece, visually, verbally, and how do we bring something extra into the advertising space. I feel like creative is really making a resurgence in advertising. For the last 10 years, I think we've been drowned in SEOs and EDMs and like very technical, massive numbers systems to get attention. I think what I'm seeing a resurgence of is like really good storytelling, great social media content, even founder-led content. I think is something that we could talk about. Like if you look at Brittany Saunders, we had her on the pod. She's scaled a fashion label just by talking about how it feels to grow a fashion label.
Right.
So there's so much that you're doing right now that's fascinating that I think the entire Australian business realm would love to hear more about. But for you, man, I think it's just telling the story, dude. It's a really cool story. What you're doing is remarkable. And I was so excited to have you on because I was like, man, I've been working with so many gyms and like, there's got to be something else people could be doing out here. And then hearing about your story was like, finally, someone's like doing something that actually matters, that actually has a story that really connects with a niche audience in a way that is super monetizable. Yeah.
Well, you should come for a workout.
I'm in,
That's
man.
the next step.
Sign me up, bro.
Yeah,
I'm there. Like
I'm
gonna come check it out. Like,
yeah.
Tonight even. What are the operating hours?
So I mean, you and I could just throw down together, but yeah, we could basically get you any time from 5:30 to like 8 p.m.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Let's book something in, man.
Yeah, I'm keen.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's lift some heavy shit and listen to some heavy shit.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm in.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It was a blast talking to you about this. And, I'm really excited to see you guys scale into Melbourne.
Yes.
And I could make some introductions for you in the Melbourne scene. And as well, I know Cub is scaling into all these cities.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's opportunities there for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good little partner, Cub.
Yeah. Those guys are great. Shout out to Dan. And but yeah, man, we'd love to have you back again sometime to talk more about business.
Awesome, appreciate it. Thanks.
Yo, my name's Dane Walker and I am disgustingly obsessed with branding. I had to figure out a way to do branding every single day, so I branded myself. Then I started my agency, Rival. And hired a team of branding mavericks hell-bent on creating brands so good that they'll make your competition shit their pants. So here's the thing, you want your brand to go viral and Rival makes brands go viral. That's why we're offering you a free 30-minute branding session to get an expert's opinion. If you don't believe me, the proof is in the pudding. Here's what clients have to say about Rival.
Rival is trusted by brands like Nutrition Warehouse, Light My Bricks, and Vumi.
So if you want to absolutely smoke the competition and make your brand go viral, hit the link below and book in your free 30-minute branding session.